there isn't really anything wrong you can say. I tell people, if you don't know what to say, then you say, I don't know what to say, but I'm here.
Let's take a quick moment to thank the people that support and sponsor the podcast. When life takes an unexpected turn, you deserve someone who will stand beside you. St. Louis attorney Chris Dully offers experienced one-on-one legal defense. Call 314-384-4000 or 314-DUI-HELP, or you can visit dullylawfirm.com. That's DULLE lawfirm.com for a free consultation.
Sometimes hope doesn't arrive loudly. Sometimes it shows up in the quiet presence of someone willing to sit beside you in some of your toughest moments. Welcome to Hope Comes to Visit. I'm Danielle Elliott Smith. This is a space where we speak honestly about grief, resilience, and the messy, sacred work of being human. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Kelly Karavousanos, a licensed professional counselor, certified thanatologist, and licensed funeral director. Kelly works with children, adolescents, adults, and families navigating grief, trauma, and life's most profound transitions. She brings a rare combination of clinical expertise and lived presence, understanding both the emotional and practical realities of loss. Kelly believes that while humans have an extraordinary ability to survive tragedy, healing doesn't happen by accident. There are clear, evidence-based ways that education, therapy, and compassionate presence can help us move through pain, not around it. This conversation is about grief, about support, and about what it truly means to sit with people through their darkest hours. Kelly, you know that when I started this podcast, you were one of the very first people that I wanted to come sit with me. So it is an honor and a delight to have you here.
Thank you, Danielle. And it is an honor and a delight to be a guest. So I appreciate you asking me on, and I'm excited for our conversation today.
Full disclosure, you have been a guiding light and a therapist for me. I am happy to tell the world that you have been someone, if not the someone, who I credit with guiding me through some of the darkest experiences I've had. And I believe that what you helped me move through is why I'm here and why I am where I am now. So thank you.
You're welcome. And I love, Danielle, the way you put that, because that is truly how I see myself. I see myself as someone who walks alongside people, and it's an honor in my life. That's been one of my greatest honors, to be able to do that with people, for people, just walking alongside them.
I think that, so thanatologist, I admit, was when I was actually reading your bio, when you first sent me the official bio, I thought, thanatologist, I don't know what that is. I had to look it up. So will you tell our lovely community what a thanatologist is? Because I know that clinical therapist, terms like that, people are familiar with what it looks like to go to a therapist when they're grieving. But what is a thanatologist?
A thanatologist is through the Association for Death Education and Counseling. It's a wonderful international organization whose sole purpose is to bring together people from all different therapists, hospice workers, researchers. So they want to talk about and understand death, dying, the cultural implications of it. They're just a really well-rounded organization. And so a certification in thanatology is through them, and you have to, there's an exam that you have to take, but a lot of it is based on your experience, your education. And as you meet these goals, you apply for this certification. And essentially what it means is that understanding death and dying is very important to you, and understanding not just the clinical implications in therapy, but how it affects our society as a whole. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
I knew your husband was a funeral director. I did not know you were as well. So,
Yes.
if you will, before we get into all of the myriad ways that you are a guiding light through this process, what led you into this field? What made you want to be a someone that could hold someone's hand, could sit with them when they were going through something so challenging?
It was a long road to get here. I had a lot of experience throughout my bachelor's and master's in different areas of mental health. So, working with the aging population, I worked in substance abuse, I worked in chronic mental illness. And so, I'll be real honest, as I graduated with my master's degree, I had this feeling that I just couldn't help one other person. Like I was emotionally spent. And so, this is going to really age me, but I opened up a newspaper way back in the day, and there was a funeral home, our local funeral home was hiring. And I was like, well, that sounds really interesting. And this will also speak to my inexperience at the time, because I said to myself, well, this is a place that sounds like I can make some money and I won't have to really help people in the ways that I had been. I learned a lot because that is entirely what funeral service is. It is helping people. It is supporting people in their darkest times. And so I left the mental health arena and I started working in the funeral home, and I was there for a little over 2 years to get my funeral director's license before the funeral home owner was like, you have this wonderful master's in counseling that you're not doing anything with, and you have we have this opportunity. Let's do something with that. And so that's what led me into the grief world. And early on, I had also lost my grandmother. And as I had sat with her, the people who surrounded us, specifically the hospice that surrounded us at that time, what they did for us changed our experience dramatically. And I knew that I wanted to be able to do that for other people. I wanted to be able to walk alongside them and take what's absolutely the darkest time in their life and make it just a little bit lighter. Even if I could ease the burden just a tiny little bit, that's what I wanted to do. So that's kind of what led me into that arena.
I love your heart so much. So let's talk about this in two different ways. Let's talk about easing the dying experience. I know that if you're willing to talk about it, you had a podcast with one of your closest friends, Over My Dead podcast, with Aaron. And this was in large part about demystifying the experience of dying.
Yeah.
And so I'll let you share a little bit about that, if you would.
Yeah. I would love to, because I love to talk about her, and I love to talk about we had so many projects together, but this was absolutely one of our favorites. And we felt that we had a very unique opportunity, her being someone diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer and me being a grief counselor. We had a unique view, and to just throw it all out there, talk about it. Because if you have ever lost someone, or you have ever been diagnosed with an illness, it doesn't have to be, something that is terminal, but just an illness, talking about those things people aren't comfortable with that. People are uncomfortable with talking about death. They're uncomfortable with talking about dying. And our whole goal was to kind of pull back the veil on that and talk about it, as uncomfortable as it was. And we tried to do it with some, some humor. I don't know that we always hit the mark, but we definitely tried to talk about it with some humor. Because sometimes if you don't laugh about it, you're going to cry. So we tried to really talk about the hard things, talk about what it was like for her to get diagnosed, talk about what it's like to live knowing that your time is very limited and that you're not going to be here forever to see your daughter get married or to be able to hold your grandchildren. You know, those things weren't going to be able to happen for her. And my role in it and has always been something that I see in my personal life and with clients every day. And that's that our society just does not deal with grief well. We do not embrace it. If it's not positive, then there's something, quote unquote, wrong with us. And there's nothing wrong with grieving. It's hurt. It hurts. It's painful. It's a dark time, but it's not wrong. And if we can talk about it in my philosophy, if we talk about it, we lighten a little bit of that darkness. And so that was the whole goal of our podcast.
So there are so many things running through my head right now, but it made me think one of the things that you taught me through my grieving experience when I lost Marty, which was when I first came to you, was, and it's something that I have passed on to people so many times, is that in your grieving period, people will fall into three categories. Not only are you dealing with loss, but your entire life is changing. But people in your life are going to be broken into three categories. People who show up for you, people who are a bit ambivalent. They show up a little bit. Sometimes they say the right things, sometimes they don't. And then people who disappear entirely. And the challenge with those three groups is that the people you are positive, who are your A people who are going to be there, many of them fall into the, oh my gosh, they're gone category because of how society treats death and dying and grieving. And because people are afraid they're going to say the wrong thing or they're uncomfortable with your grief. I had people who were people that I was sure were going to be there for me who wouldn't even make eye contact with me. Yeah. And I had someone who was supposed to be very close to me say, I mean, come on, Danielle. I mean, it's hard for them to see you so sad. And I thought, it's hard for them to see me so sad. It's hard for me to be so sad and to additionally feel so abandoned by people who I thought would be there for me. But you're struggling with just watching it. So, okay. But that's why having someone like you and actually doing the work, and this is, one of the things I said in the introduction of you is I realized, you helped me to realize that if I just buried it all, much like I had done with drinking and alcohol, and just tried to tamp everything down and pretend it wasn't happening, it was going to come out at some point. Yeah. So the only way through all of this was through it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I feel as though that was much of what you and Aaron were working to demonstrate through heart and humor and real life anecdotes, was to say, here we are. This is life, and it's part of the real, messy, challenging, upside down and inside out human experience.
Yeah, here it is, all warts and all, right? Because we need to see all the pieces of it, all the pieces. It's not all rainbows and butterflies.
Was there
not even?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say not even by a long shot.
Was there anything when you were doing the podcast that surprised you? Was there anything that you learned? Because I think the intention was to showcase the real human experience. But sometimes when we are doing that, we learn as well, and we're a bit surprised.
I was really surprised at the comments and the people who contacted me after listening to the podcast. I'll be honest, when we started it, it's kind of raw and talking about grief. I mean, I've been doing this for a very long time. There were times where I would be out and I would say, oh, I'm a grief counselor. And people would be like, oh, no, I'm not. I don't want to have anything to do with that. I'm not talking about it. So I'm really used to people pushing back. And so I think what was really surprising to me is how hungry people were for for what we were doing, for talking about and pulling things back and just being really open and raw about our own experiences. So that really surprised me in a good way. I felt really good about that. Um, and I have to tell you that some of the people that reached out to me after we put I was brought to tears by how profound they found it. So to me, that was very surprising, but it was a pleasant surprise for sure.
But I think you're right, though. We are hungry for this.
Yeah.
The amazing thing for me was I found that in my group A, the people who really showed up, the largest percentage of them were people who had been there, people who
Yeah.
had some level of personal experience in deep loss. And what I realized was this type of loss is the singular human experience we all share. Not every one of us is going to be married. Not everyone is going to be a parent. Not everyone is going to get the job of their dreams or go on the vacation or have
Right.
some profound personal experience that disappoints or excites or joy. But every single one of us is eventually going to lose someone who matters to us deeply. And yet, it is the one experience we are most ill-equipped to handle. And so, to me, having these conversations has become so important. Being able to talk hope and grief and resilience and what it looks like to get back up again.
Yeah.
I hadn't started this podcast when you and I were first talking, and I quite honestly couldn't imagine it because I had never been in a place where I couldn't see or feel or think hope. And it occurred to me that I needed to be in that place in order to feel equipped to have these conversations, so that when I was having conversations and chit chats with people about moving through and showing up on the other side, that I knew what both sides looked like. But again, it's the moving through. Is there anything you feel as part of your human experience? Because you've had to move through your own as well. You're not exempt from loss, even being the expert. Is there
Oh,
any,
no.
as the human side of you, that you feel, especially in the past year, that has changed your perspective?
I think the one thing that I can say about, so I've had four significant losses in my life. Early, the first two losses were my grandparents, and they're very close. But I was not working in the field at that time. I was not. I was young, still in college, and so didn't have this knowledge base and experience behind me. When my dad died 10 years ago, I was fully immersed in this work. I was running support groups. I was doing grief counseling at the time and working in the funeral home. So I would tell people all the time that, that didn't exempt me, no, from my grief. But what it did exempt me from was the layer of uncertainty and shame that people have about having the deep feelings that they're having. So when I would lay in bed and feel like I couldn't get out of bed, or when I just turned on the radio and started crying, there was not a voice in my head that said I shouldn't be feeling this way. In fact, my experience and my knowledge base helped me give more self-compassion that this was okay for me to feel this way. That if I didn't feel like getting out of bed, just last Wednesday, I had that experience. I just was so heavy with grief that I felt sick, and I felt, overwhelmed with missing my friend. And so, but I didn't shame myself and say, get it together, pull yourself together. Everybody has a loss and everybody still has to function. Instead, I was able to use a much softer voice with myself, that it's okay that I feel this way. That's part of It's part of the exchange for loving someone so deeply. And I really wouldn't change that for the world. So I think just being able to have that softness is what's changed for me.
I love that. So you taught me how to have that level of compassion, self-compassion. And I think also that I grew to understand that it is part of that exchange, right? That we grieve in proportion to how we love, right?
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
if I didn't care, I wouldn't feel,
Yeah.
right? If someone is
Mhm.
insignificant to me, I'm not going to have an emotional reaction to them moving on.
No,
But if I
I
do care deeply, I will miss them. I will miss them in the little moments and in the big moments. And allowing myself to miss them feels like giving myself permission to acknowledge how much I loved them.
100%. Grief is love in a different form. So knowing that, I think, can help you, kind of understand, well, why is this? Why does it feel so deep? Why does it hurt so deeply? And I think too, knowing that our connections with people are very different. We can have, it's not a one or the other. They're either a deep connection or an acquaintance, that somebody we just know and don't really care. It really runs a spectrum, right? So there's people that are so deeply close to us that, I use an analogy of a rope, right? So like, I feel like my connection with my children is like the rope that ties a ship to the shore. I mean, it's that big, right? But my connections with people that like hold the door open for me at the grocery store, it's like a string. It's thin, right? So, but everyone else in between is a different sized rope. So depending on how big your rope is, depends on how deep that grief is. So the deeper your connection, the deeper your grief. But all different sizes of ropes exist in our lives. We have all different kinds of connections. So kind of understanding your own relationship with the person who died is really important. Because I'll get phone calls from people who are like, my cat died and I feel like I'm grieving deeper than I did for my father. And that conversation leads to, well, what does that rope look like, right? What does that connection look like? And if I'm a cat lover, so I used to have a cat. Her name was Princess, and I'm telling you what, our rope was thick. We had it was a hard loss when she died, and so judging ourselves because we're not grieving deep enough over specific losses is a real problem. I think a lot of people struggle with. So just understanding that the relationship is what matters, not what we call it. So it doesn't matter if it's a father, a mother, a husband, a grandchild. It's the depth of that relationship. It's the depth of that connection that really speaks to what the depth of our grief is going to look like.
What about how people judge other people's grief? How do we help to guide people who say, I can't believe you're not over it yet? It's been 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years. Aren't you okay by now? How do we help to guide friends, family, acquaintances with the compassion that I wish they could give to someone who is experiencing something challenging?
Yeah. Well, I think you clearly gave me some parameters there, because there's something that I would want to say that you could say to them, but you asked me to tell you what it would look like with compassion. So I'll give it to you with compassion. Sometimes people just need to stop, like just not say anything, right? I typically feel that it's really important for bereaved to, I try to empower bereaved to speak up for themselves. So if somebody is saying something that is more hurtful than helpful, that's exactly what I'll have them say. That statement is more hurtful than it is helpful. I would prefer that you just not say that to me. And that's a really compassionate way to say it. It can be said other ways that are not as compassionate, but if it's more hurtful, that's kind of a good gauge in your own mind as a person who's grieving, is what they're saying helpful or hurtful? Not is it true, is it not true? Because nobody can speak your truth except you.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's helpful, even getting into the maybe the groove of saying to people or telling people when something is helpful, that's really helpful that you said that to me. That also kind of gets your radar up for those people who are saying things that are not so helpful. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. What is a potential guide for the people who say, I didn't call because I just didn't know what to say?
So how do I respond to that?
Well, or is there, do we just leave those people to their own devices? Or is there a way to potentially suggest that it is possible to reach out, right? I am of the belief that just never reaching out falls into the more hurtful category, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And never saying anything is worse than trying in some capacity. And I know that the level of discomfort is, but I don't want to say the wrong thing, right? So I'll just say nothing. But I know I have shared this with you before, but many years ago when I was in the blogging world, there was a young mother whose daughter was the same age as Delaney's, and her daughter passed away. And many people reached out, and it was a time that we had answering machines. And I remember her writing about it afterwards, and she said, I was so grateful to all of the people who reached out, who emailed, who left messages. Many times I could not answer. I couldn't respond. I didn't call back. But I will tell you, the loudest noise for me, all of the people who didn't call because it was too hard for them. And from that day, and so this is 20 years ago now, almost 18, 19 years ago. From that day, I have always been the person who calls. And I typically say, don't add me to your to-do list. I'm not requesting a call back. I just want you to know I'm thinking about you. I just try to say something that lets people know that I'm showing up for them and that they're loved. Because, and I now know from experience too, that the silence is the loudest.
Absolutely. Well, I think it kind of goes back to that. People, sometimes people have had to go through their own losses to develop that empathy that, that they're able to show others. I think doing what we're doing today, I think talking about grief, talking about what do you do? There isn't really anything wrong you can say. I tell people, if you don't know what to say, then you say, I don't know what to say, but I'm here. I love you. It's okay to say you don't, because you're not going to be able to fix it. There's no words that you're magically going to be able to come up with that is going to take this grief away from this individual that you love. What they need is connection. They need love. They need to know they're being thought of. They don't need answers, because we can't give them that. So take the pressure off of yourself to have the answer and just call. That's the education.
I love that, because I can remember thinking, no, like there isn't anything you could say short of you telling me that this was all some type of sick joke and I'm going to wake up tomorrow and it was all a really, really bad dream. There isn't anything that will make this better. It just is. And
absolutely.
At this point, I'm just trying to keep breathing. I'm just trying to keep getting out of bed and telling myself to keep going. And I was so truly grateful to the people who did show up.
Right.
And I know that for some people it was really hard. And a lot of the people who showed up for me were people who I hadn't talked to or heard from in years. And it's a magical connection that way.
I agree.
It really
I agree.
is. Are there other side projects you're working on now?
Well, everyone keeps saying, I wanted to give you a book referral, but there's not really any books out there on how, what happens when you're in the midlife and you lose your best friend, the person who knows you best. So that's been on my mind. I do want to continue the podcast, but I'm not really sure what that's going to look like or where that's going to go from here. So those are the side projects. Something new that I'm doing too is, since my move out to Denver, I have been working with a wonderful organization called the Heartlight Center, and they are an organization with the true mission of my heart. They provide meaningful and accessible grief support services throughout Denver and virtually throughout the United States. So I'm very happy to be working with this. It's a nonprofit organization. Their headquarters is Denver, but they have satellites in different cities and are expanding. And they're just a wonderful, their mission of getting the word out. Let's talk about it. Let's support people who are grieving. It directly aligns with my heart. So I'm happy to be doing that.
Where can people connect with them?
Their website is heartlightcenter.org, and they can look. There's just an overwhelming amount of groups virtually. There's something for everyone. So there's general grief, but there's also, if you've lost a child, if you've lost a parent, if you are a caregiver, we have a new group starting next month to help people who are anticipating a loss, whether it's their loved one is in hospice or has a long-term illness. That's a group that they can become a part of. But groups are really, I think, so strong in the sense that they connect people, and that connection is really what is part of that healing process. We need to have the connection. And grief oftentimes makes us feel so isolated and alone. Nobody knows how I'm feeling. Nobody knows, how bad it is for me. Because typically, as you were speaking about your support system before, Danielle, with dividing people up into 3, a lot of times the people around you just want you to be better. They just don't want you to be sad anymore. They just want you to be. And so coming into a group, you don't have that. Everybody that walks in there is struggling, and you can connect on that piece and be raw and honest and open without worrying about, them feeling bad and wanting to, quote unquote, fix you. So I just think groups play a large part in many people's healing processes. So I can't speak enough about how important that is.
Kelly, how would you define hope?
Oh, that's a good question. I've been struggling with hope lately. I'll be honest with you. I would define hope as the ability to see that no matter how bad things are or how much pain you're in, that all of that's only temporary, that there's going to be something on the other side of that. So that's how I would define hope.
That makes sense to me. It took me a while to see that, right? And I think it was the moving through process. If you were to be talking to people who are newly experiencing grief outside of potentially finding community, do you have any recommendations for them?
I would recommend that they talk about it, and whether that's talk about it in a journal, like if it is too difficult to speak out loud, journaling, I would recommend. Obviously, therapy, I think, is always a good place to start, even if it's just to help you get grounded, oriented to this new world that you're living in without your loved one. Therapy, reading. It's a hard one because some people are able to, but a lot of people, especially in acute grief, it's hard to even concentrate long enough to get through a book. So that's an iffy one, but there's so many great books out there on coping with your loss. And then I would also recommend just saying yes, even when you feel like saying no. So when you're asked, let's go get lunch, or, hey, how are you doing? Do you want to talk? A lot of times our inclination when things are painful is to turn inward and be like, no, I don't, I don't want to be the downer. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to, but that's what creates the ability for things to be lifted, is for it to be, to put out in the sunshine. So that's something that I would recommend as well.
You are amazing. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you'd like to add?
I would like to add that for each person who's listening, to share with someone, because as they're listening to this, I do believe they're probably thinking about someone that needs to hear this message or that. And so I say share it, because that's something that I think is really important. Reach out.
I think you're so right, because these are the conversations that we keep these feelings hidden in the dark. We're afraid to say this grief is hurting. We're afraid to say it's been 2 months, 6 months, 9 months, 2 years, and it still really, really, really hurts. Am I allowed to talk about it? And the answer is yes, right?
Yes.
And everyone's grief is so individual. There isn't a right or a wrong way to do it. And
No.
I don't think we tell people that often enough. I don't think we tell them that they can have compassion for themselves, that empathy isn't about running in and turning on the lights and saying, here, let me fix you. Let me make everything better.
Right.
It's about being willing to sit in the dark with someone and say, how can I help? Right.
Yeah.
And if I can't help, I'm here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me climb into the blankets under the covers with you. That's what I need when I'm in my darkest moments, right? I need someone just to climb in the blankets and just, sit with me.
Yeah, just rub my hair.
Yeah, exactly.
Rub my hair, give me a hug, tell me it's gonna be okay. Because eventually, and I think this goes back to your definition of hope, right? That it's temporary. And sometimes, we hear like the sun will come up tomorrow, right? Sometimes the sun comes up and it still really, really, really hurts, right?
Yeah.
I know that tomorrow is a new day and we've got a ton of cliches that tell us things will get better, but it doesn't always feel better the next day. Sometimes it takes 3 months worth of new days for us to feel a modicum of change. And I want people to know that if it doesn't feel better tomorrow, that's okay too.
Absolutely.
We'll eventually get there, but having community and finding someone to talk to, as I did with you. Within the first week of my grief, I had someone reach out and say, may I recommend a grief therapist to you? And then said, here's Kelly. And so that was life altering for me.
Yeah.
It made all the difference in the world, and it has me where I am now. And so for that, I am truly fundamentally grateful. So thank you.
Thank you, Danielle.
And thank
you.
Thank you for taking time, and thank you for being a guiding light, both professionally and personally, and sharing your lived experience as well.
I'm happy to do it, because I know that this talking about it is the only way we're going to make any significant change. And my goal is to make my grief lighter, just like it is to help others.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, friends, for joining us on this beautiful, heartfelt, soul-filled conversation of Hope Comes to Visit. I told you that it was going to be a good one, and I so hope that it has touched you the way it has touched me. And as Kelly suggested, I do hope that you will turn around and share it with someone who you hope needs to hear this conversation. Please review and rate the episodes and pass them on to the people you know who need to hear these conversations. And until we get to see you again, I hope you will take very good care of you. Thank you.
Naturally, it's important to thank the people who support and sponsor the podcast. This episode is supported by Chris Dully, a trusted criminal defense attorney and friend of mine here in St. Louis, who believes in second chances and solid representation. Whether you're facing a DWI, felony, or traffic issue, Chris handles your case personally, with clarity, compassion, and over 15 years of experience. When things feel uncertain, it helps to have someone steady in your corner. Call 314-384-4000 or 314-DUI-HELP, or you can visit dullylawfirm.com to schedule your free consultation.